Hello, my name is Edward Roberts. Thank you so much for joining me here today. A topic I wanted to discuss was something that is dear to me because it's a funny story that recaps when I was ready to begin this journey, but the simple question of, am I ready to be a parent? And if you want the 10-second answer, yes and no. I don't think anybody's really ready to be a parent, but I think once it's dropped in your lap, you figure things out on the fly pretty quickly. I imagine it when you first bring the baby home from the hospital, it kind of reminds me of those guys on stage. I think it's an Asian art. They do the plate spinning. You kind of get this one going, then you run over the other side of the stage and you get that one going and you come back and this one's just about to fall and you get that one going again. Not a talent I have, but just an analogy for what it feels like to be a parent very early on anyways, the first couple days. One funny story, and again, this goes to show how unprepared you are. The late night feedings. Obviously, my wife is in charge of that, and our firstborn, she was up with him, but I was up too, just trying to do my best. I recall it must have been close to 3 o'clock in the morning. We were both just exhausted, and I recall standing in the hallway, looking her right in the eyes as the baby is screaming in the room just across from us, and I looked at her and I said, I have nothing left to give. And I did not wait for a response. I turned around, I walked to the bedroom, and I fell face down on the bed, and I must have been out immediately. Leaving her high and dry like that, I felt terrible the next day. I still do to this day, but we laugh about it. It's become a joke in our household when you really, when you're spent and you just have nothing left. That's the line we use. I have nothing left to give. Funny though, going back to even before we had our firstborn, and brought him home from the hospital, I was talking to friends who were maybe a bit more established than me and already had kids. I recall one day with a friend, a really close friend, just sitting there, and I just said, hey man, what's it like having a child for the first time, going from having, just the couple to having, a family? And he said, oh yeah, well, you like martial arts, right? I said, yeah, I'm into martial arts. He goes, you like playing ice hockey? I said, yeah. He goes, you snowboard? I said, yeah. He goes, all that's gone. All that's gone, and you're essentially going to be getting up, working, doing things around the house, and being there for your child, and that is going to be it. And I'm sure he meant that half in jest, but that wasn't entirely in jest. And I think something that you find very early on when you have children is, things that you were into, things that you had time for are now no longer there. I used to have, I wouldn't call it a fetish, but certainly a penchant for keeping my vehicle quite clean. I would take pride in it, be out there every weekend, washing it, waxing it, using the leather treatment on it, making sure it looked nice. It wasn't that nice of a car, but to me it meant a lot, and I put in the time to make sure it always looked its best. Once I had a child, that was one of the first things to immediately fall off. My vehicle now, I wash it 3-4 times a year if I'm lucky, and it is never a priority. What is a priority for me is my children, and I still have to work a 9-to-5 job. I try to make these videos for you guys as often as I can and be there for my wife and for our home and yard work and things like that, but priority is always the children. And as a parent, you never want to say no. When my kids come up and ask me to play with them or to show them something, or they want to show me something or be engaged with something, watch a show with them, I'm very, very reluctant to say no. And that wasn't always the case. I kind of felt like I was doing the best for them by working hard and providing and doing things behind the curtain, sort of behind the scenes, to make sure that their lives were better. But in the end, I realized all they really wanted, was me. I say in the end, my children are very young. I'm just saying the end of that mindset. I feel like I got a vision from my future self. And this is kind of woo-woo here, a little bit creepy maybe, but I honestly feel like I got a vision sent back through space and time from my older self. And essentially, it wasn't words. It was almost like an energy and a feeling, and I could tell the intent of the message. It was quite simple, and that is, they're only going to be young like this once, and if you don't spend the time with them then and now, you're going to regret that the rest of your life. And that really hit home and meant a lot to me. And whether I just had that thought naturally, or as I said, it feels like it was a message from my future self, I took it to heart. And when my kids want to sit on the floor and play Lego for an hour and a half, you better believe I'm there to do it with them. So is anybody actually ready to have children? Again, a simple answer is no, but you're going to figure it out real quick. And there's no handbook that comes home with these babies. You're in the hospital a day, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe, and you come home with this newborn. Hopefully you've got the house set up. I mean, you did have 8, 9 months of notice that this child was coming, so hopefully you've got things ready. It's sort of a turnkey operation. You come home and, you know, welcome them into your home, and now you've become a family. And it's a magical moment, it's a special moment, and I think a lot of people look back on their lives with nothing but positivity of those early moments. But I'm gonna level with you, it's super rough. Of course it is, it's super rough. There's gonna be sleepless nights. There's going to be times where maybe you didn't have as much money as you thought you used to, and things maybe, the analogy of spreading butter over too much bread, you know, it's going to feel like that sometimes. But should you avoid it? No. And not to get too sappy on you here, but another thought I had later in life when I had kids was every year that you wait to have children is a year of their life that you're going to miss out on. And what I mean by that is someone that has children very young, you'll probably get to see your grandchildren and maybe even your great-grandchildren. I'm not promoting, you know, anybody going out and getting knocked up at 16 when they're just not ready, but I'm saying once you're even remotely established, you've got your own place, you have a full-time job, you're doing okay, and you've met someone and you want to start a family, don't hesitate because you think that you're not established enough. You could always have more money. You could always have a bigger, nicer house. Those things just don't matter. This is coming from someone who grew up with nothing. So I recall what it was like to have a rough upbringing, and there were still times of joy, even in an impoverished situation. So if you're doing okay and you think that, you know, maybe it's time, if you're even having that thought, it probably is time. But I'm saying don't put it off because you think you're not ready. You're never really going to be. And as far as being established, if you've got the things that the baby will need and you think that you can provide for them, I mean, early on, they're not that expensive. I mean, things like, well, whether you're breastfeeding or you're buying formula, baby food, things like that, they're not really that expensive. Kids don't really start to get too expensive off that initial influx of buying, you know, setting up their room and everything. That's obviously quite costly. But once that's done, and again, you had about a 9-month time frame there to plan for that. Kids tend to get expensive when they're into sports and activities and things. Once they start school, I'd say the bills start to kind of pile up grade 2 onward for children, I find. Elementary school, later elementary school, depending on how active and into things your child is. Hockey's not cheap. I can tell you that. Hockey is not cheap. Those kids grow like weeds and you're buying new equipment all the time. But varying degrees of different things. Hey, soccer is cheap. Try to get your kids into soccer if you're worried about the financial burden of their activities. But are you ready? If you're watching this video, honestly, that tells me that I think you might be, or at least you're thinking about it. And I'm certainly not a professional, but I am a father of 2 boys that I love immensely, and I'm always trying to be there for. And I can tell you, half-heartedly, half-jokingly, you're never going to be ready, but hey, you got to jump in the pool sometime. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name again is Edward Roberts. Thank you for joining me on the channel. And hey, if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you, both new budding parents and old ones, maybe that have kids that have left the nest. I'm not there yet, but the journey's still continuing. Thank you so much. Know that you are appreciated. Take care.